Hey YouTube. I kind of want to talk about this in my last video, but I realized that it could easily turn into a 30 or 40 minute video, and not a lot of people have the attention span for that sort of thing. I'm going to cover two topics in this one. We're going to talk about what my experiences was like on traditional antidepressants, and what things have I tried to deal with depression and improve my mood that didn't involve drugs or eating liver. If you still have watched my videos and you still can't stand the idea of eating liver, which I would, I encourage you to reconsider that. Here's a path towards some sanity, hopefully for you. So first off, I'm going to talk about my experiences with traditional antidepressants. So in the early 2000s, I found myself in a drug rehabilitation program, and I had told the counselor that I started using drugs when I couldn't stand being depressed anymore. And I figured if I use psychedelic drugs, I might somehow have this wonderful Timothy Leary experience where everything sorts itself out. But then that led to using other kinds of drugs, which are very much more harmful than psychedelics. And I got addicted to heavy stuff. When they heard that, they knew I was already struggling in the program to remain clean, but that sort of solidified it for them, and so they sent me off to a psychiatrist who promptly put me on an SSRI, and within days of taking a course of the SSRIs, I had some extremely terrifying thoughts about performing horrifying acts, and I was so spooked by it because I'd heard these conspiracy theories about people that had shot up schools being on SSRIs, and the drugs sort of depersonalizing them, and I felt that maybe that was happening to me. I'm an extremely nonviolent person. I was raised in an abusive household, and my dad had probably some kind of psychosis, but he was nearly violent, but extremely scary. And when I was very young, I vowed to never be like my father. So when I started having any semblance of the thought train he had, that also scared the living shit out of me. So I flushed those down the drain, and went back to my psychiatrist at the drug rehab place and said, "Please, for the love of God, give me something else. I've scared the shit out of myself with the thoughts that I've had on these drugs." They put me on Wellbutrin, which actually worked really well. My drug of choice before was Adderall, and actually, they didn't say this at the time when they prescribed me, and nowhere in the medical literature was there an admission of this, but actually Wellbutrin is a distant cousin of cathinone, which is probably a sister to amphetamine, so it's very far removed, and it tickles the same circuits, but it just doesn't, if you were to snort a couple pills, it wouldn't be any fun. So there's a limit on what it will do for enhancing your mood and dopamine and everything. So actually it really worked really well for me, because probably I still had some kind of brain damage going on from the amphetamine use. And I continued taking that Wellbutrin for maybe 5 or 7 years or something, while I worked my way through all the difficult stuff that I was running away from when I first started drugs in that recovery program. So I have to say that I am an antidepressant success story, but the Wellbutrin had lots of side effects, and again, being somewhat related with the stimulants, I did suffer a little bit of paranoia on occasion. I would get a little bit aggravated sometimes in situations where I would not normally, and I absolutely had the sexual dysfunction aspect of using antidepressants. So I had disappointed a couple of girlfriends during that time, so that sucked, and I really didn't want to continue using it, but it took quite a number of years for me to get to a place where I was healthy enough to get off the antidepressants. So don't take any of these videos as me telling you to not take drugs if you need them. I'm saying if you're tired of using drugs, there's other ways to go about things, and I wish I would have known about a lot of this stuff when I was new to the recovery program. But I might have been too screwed up to actually follow through on any of the suggestions. So whatever. The past is the past, and we can only create a better future for ourselves, right? So let's talk a little bit about other solutions other than eating gross pieces of meat. When I was 18, I had a bit of a break, like a break in my depression, and I decided to start riding bicycles long distances. And what I noticed is that I sort of got like a runner's high from this, and because I couldn't run because of my tibial torsion, but I was able to get that benefit, and that it was one of the things that sort of helped adjust my mood. I had an 18-mile commute back and forth to work on a bicycle, and when I would come to work, I would be just like, oh, thank God the ride's over, and now everything else is like not as hard as riding the bike that long, because I didn't exactly have a very I had like some mountain bike with terrible tires on it. It was like went like 12 miles per hour. It was horrible, and it was almost like a moving meditation on the way to work. So I would usually end up at work in a fairly good mood, even though I might have been a little tired. And then when I would leave, it would also help clear out all the aggravation that I had accumulated. So bike riding is probably something really good for people with depression, especially if you can go and get lost in nature. That's one of my first coping strategies that I ever discovered when I was really young. Another one, as I discovered later on, is weightlifting. Now, there's something different about doing cardio activity and doing weightlifting. I can't really put my finger on it, but for some reason, weightlifting is really good for increasing your confidence and your, your sort of mental sturdiness. It's also because when you get into weightlifting, where you're trying to actually get better every single time you walk out of that gym, where you're really pushing yourself every single time you walk in there, and almost just almost completely fail to hold the bar or whatever, because you've just maxed yourself out. When you walk out of there, you feel like $1 million because you've beat on this you've beat on this demon, that's stronger than you, and saw that you almost won against it, and then next time you do better, and it's like playing a role-playing game where you are continuously leveling up. Every time you walk in there and walk out, like, you might not lift more weight in terms of pounds or reps, but you actually are gaining strength, and you're getting stronger, and actually fit people look pretty good, so you're improving your outward appearance as well. So which is a side benefit, but for whatever reason, resistance training just has a lot of effects on the mind. I would say it has as many effects on the mind as on the body. So I would really recommend doing that for mental health reasons. Another one that comes to mind immediately is meditation. When I was really young, I got into Zen Buddhism and read a book by a woman named Charlotte Joko Beck, and there's something about the way that she related. She sort of like a lot of people that write books about Zen Buddhism or Buddhism in particular are usually talking about nirvana and enlightenment and escaping the cycle of endless suffering and all this stuff. And it's sort of like this giant quest to ascend to a higher level. That's common in Buddhism, but the Charlotte Joko Beck really relayed meditation and as a sort of self-care routine, as sort of a emotion management routine, and that touched me. So when I initially got into the drug rehab program, they told me that you have to connect to a higher power, and I was a complete atheist at the time. So I figured if I could fudge doing meditation into this program and manage to get through the 12 steps, then that would be the right way to do it. So I started a meditation practice, and I would meditate for 30 minutes a couple times a week, especially when I was having very difficult feelings. And even during that time, I had went through a breakup which just destroyed me in my first year of recovery, because my mind was already fucked up so badly that when you added that on top, it was just like, I'm really surprised that I stayed clean through it. But meditation is what saved my butt through all those difficult thoughts. And the most important thing was, when you're going through sort of a traumatic event, there's a lot to process in your head, and it can take a very long time. And some people have a tendency to sort of repress that stuff or turn it on themselves, which I have a tendency to do. It's something that I inherited from my mother. Whatever. But meditation really allowed me to work through those thoughts without them being a 2x4 to the genitals, basically. So I really have meditation to thank for getting me through some of the most difficult parts of my life. And I think that maybe if you have like sort of a low-level depression and it's not acute, what would probably benefit you is not the marathon sessions that I was doing, but maybe 5 minutes twice a day or something like that. Or you occasionally do a marathon if you need it. But if you just sort of keep your mind adjusted a little bit better with perpetual practice, you will probably see a lot of benefits. Now, for meditation, there's actually a lot of scientific research supporting its positive effects on the brain, just as well as resistance training, lifting weights. I'm not really sure about like running and bicycling and cardio activity like that, but if you look out there sure is a lot of evidence saying that basically if we've got something better than antidepressants that we can use if we have mental illness. So I highly recommend you to check all these things out. And I think, I might actually be done talking about all this stuff. So this may be the end of the liver series, unless there's another tweak that I find. So, but if you have some interesting things to tell me that you do to help with your depression or anxiety or any other sort of constant nagging mental illness, I really want to hear it, because I would like to implement as much in my life as I can to make myself a well person. Anyone who's messed up just wants to be normal, and I'm no exception. I want to be a happy person that lives a normal life, despite how my life started out. So anything you got for me, shoot it my way. And hopefully this has helped you. And also, if you're having a hard time and you're a watcher of my videos, and I probably speak the same language you do, feel free to send me a message if you ever need any help. So anyway, without further ado, video's done. I'm probably going to start talking about bikes pretty soon. So catch you on the next video. Bye.